Okay, here we are. The Creakers, Tom Fletcher, Chapter 11. See what happens to Ella Annoying. Okay, Lucy and Norman lay very still, silently pretending to sleep as they listened out for the first signs of a creaker. Ella remained sitting on her spot on the floor, too scared to move and too scared to sleep. She just sat there, wishing for the sun to come up and for this scary, spooky night to be over. Perfect creaker. There was no way Lucy was going to fall asleep tonight, not with the risk of losing her dad's jacket to a bunch of creepy creatures from under her bed. As she stared at the inside of a wardrobe and her eyes adjusted to the dark, she began to see things inside. Her second and third favourite pairs of dungarees hanging overhead, her shoes piled in the corner, and then something else caught her eye. Something writing on the inside of the door. It was a chart measuring her height over the years. Of course, it was right there every time she opened the wardrobe, but it was one of those things she'd seen so often that it had become invisible to her. Now that she had time to really look at it, she realised how amazing it was to see how small she had once been and how much she had grown. But as she studied it, in the thin crack of the light coming through the slightly open door, she realised what was so special about it. Scribbled with a marker pen next to the chart was the word Lucy. And Lucy recognised her dad's handwriting, the distinctive way he wrote his Y's with the extra loop in the tail. Her heart fluttered a little at seeing this piece of her dad, and then she'd forgotten of her dad that she'd forgotten was there. She couldn't remember when the chart had started. She squinted in the dim light and looked at the very lowest mark on the chart, close to her feet. The words age 2 and 7 months were written there in her mum's neat handwriting. As her name moved higher and higher up the door and the ages next to it grew older, Lucy spotted something right near the top. There was some more writing, way up high, far too high to be Lucy's height. Carefully and quietly, she stood up in the wardrobe to get a better look. As she got closer, she read the words Mum, age 32. And a little further up was Dad, age 34. Lucy had suddenly an unexpected feeling. Her whole body felt warm and safe, like she was being hugged. Just seeing the words Mum and Dad written in a parent's handwriting brought back those feelings that only families could give to each other. She felt comforted for a moment, snug in the wardrobe, as though somehow the grown-up less world outside didn't exist, like a family was back together again, and the three of them were right there in the wardrobe. Her happy moment was interrupted by the chiming of a clock tower echoing across Whiffington, announcing the hour. Must be getting late, thought Lucy as she counted the chimes. 3 in the morning already, she thought. That went fast, and then that's when she heard it. Not a creak, but a yawn. It was Ella. Lucy peered out the crack in the wardrobe door and saw Ella stretching sleepily before rubbing her tired eyes. Obviously, our scary creaker story wasn't scary enough to keep Ella awake all night, she thought. Then Lucy heard something else. Another yawn. This time it was Norman. Oh, that useless boy, Lucy thought, watching him snuggle comfortably down on the bed and start snoozing on her pillow. But Lucy had the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She peeped out of her hiding place in the wardrobe again and saw the most astonishing thing. A faint cloud of, does anyone know? Golden dust was wafting across her room, settling over the eyes of Ella and Norman as it floated by. Lucy's heart stopped. Ella and Norman weren't falling asleep. They were being sent to sleep. She watched the dust settle into the corner of their eyes as they drifted deeper into hypnotic slumber. Then Lucy realised that Ella and Norman's sleepy eyes weren't the only eyes she could see. They were there. 4 pairs of beady black eyeballs were lurking in the shadows beneath the bed, staring out. Lucy froze inside the wardrobe, but the eyes weren't looking at Lucy. They hadn't seen her yet. They were looking at Ella, wrapped up in the jacket, and at all the delicious rotten bits of rubbish scattered temptingly around the room.
"They be a good dozing now,"
croaked a voice from the darkness.
"Dozing dust always be working a treat." "Them kidlings won't be waking up for a long time this night," grunted another. "Stupid girl brung a weedy little boy with her. Look, it's the tidy kindling from across the walk. He won't be doing any help."
They all laughed. This is good, thought Lucy. The Creakers thought that Ella, curled up in the fluorescent jacket, was her, just as she and Norman had planned.
"Come on, let's be getting this stink out,"
hissed another. With that, Lucy saw movement in the shadows. Her tummy was full of fluttery wobbles. Her mouth dropped open in shock. Goosebumps pimpled down both arms, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up as the four Creakers crept out of the blackness, and she caught sight of them for the very first time. Their skin was black as treacle and shimmered with sticky wetness, like the repulsive flesh of a slug. They had veiny ears that looked like rotting cabbage leaves, and long pointy claws that seemed to click across the floor like spider legs as they crept. Each of them dragged a rotten tail behind them which looked like a mouldy brown banana skin. One by one they stood up, revealing their full rottenness. Their heads were just high enough to poke over the side of Lucy's bed. Lucy squinted in the dimness. From her hiding spot inside the cupboard, she could see them properly. One of them was freckled with boils and pus-filled spots among his gangly arms. Another's sticky skin had dry, flaky patches peeling off, reminding Lucy of the time she got sunburn on holiday. The chubbiest one had matted, waxy hair poking out of its oversized ears, and the belly like a small round cannonball. The last one to emerge from the dark had a layer of spikes on its back, like uncut fingernails poking out in every direction. Do you want to see him? Yeah. Big fatty one. There's one with all the boils and pus. And this one's got all the kind of broken toenail type things. Yuck. That was a mouldy bit of pizza there with mushrooms growing out of it. Nice. This one was the leader, Lucy could tell by the way the rest creaked out of his way as he crept along the wooden floorboards and into her room. The sight of them made Lucy gag. They were the most hideous things she'd ever seen, but the disgustingness was only just beginning.
"Oh, look at this," the flabby one.
"Oh, look at this," the flabby, rounded one said, holding up a rotten slice of pizza. They found it. With fluffy green mould oozing from the crust. Norman had salvaged it from the rubbish truck earlier on, thinking it would be a great Creaker bait. He was right, thought Lucy, pulling a face as a Creaker gave it a greedy sniff.
"Put it down, we's here for one thing this night," hissed the leader.
Guff, what an awful name, Lucy thought. Guff let out an awful gassy bottom burp from his fat bum, and Lucy realised how he got his name. But Grunt
looks at all these treasures in the room be covered in nice rotten,
said Gruff, looking at the trail laid out across the floor. Grunt. That's an even worse name than Gruff, thought Lucy. But Grunt, the one with the pricky nails on his back, had a rotten scowl on his face. Seemed to suit his name too.
Gruff's right. We've got to take the stinking stuff. Grunt, it be too good to waste,
blurted one of the horrible blurted the one with the horrible boils, interrupting the one with the flaky skin.
Don't speak when I'm speaking, Sniff, you rotten twizzle. Sorry, Scratch. Sorry, I forgot every time, Sniff said with a nervous chuckle. Scratch, Sniff, be quiet,
huffed Grunt. Grunt, Gruff, Scratch, and Sniff. Lucy repeated their names to herself in her head. They were repulsive names for repulsive creatures.
Fine, if you wants the rubbish, we better be creaking swift and quickly, Grunt said.
And with those words, the 4 creakers began doing the grossest, most peculiar thing. They stretched out their sticky, wet arms and legs and began rolling around the floor. As they rolled over the oozing pizza slices, the empty cereal boxes, the old sandwich crust, the single dirty shoe, the leftover from dinner, and every disgusting bit of rubbish, Lucy saw it, all starting to stick to their slimy skin. When they finally stopped rolling and stood up, the floor was clean. The creakers were covered from sticky head to flaky toe. It was the strangest thing Lucy had ever witnessed. 4 odd little creatures coated in litter and rubbish. Now they are, all kind of rolling around like pigs in mud. See that? Grunt, Gruff, Scratch, and Sniff looked at each other and saw how completely covered they were in the mess. Then, one by one, they started laughing. Now, creakers don't laugh like you and I do. They come from a backwards world where right is wrong, where good is bad, and where laughter sounds more like the wailing of a newborn baby. They howled for nearly 5 minutes, revealing the splendid rottenness of their find. And just as Lucy started to wonder if their laughter might wake up Ella and Norman, Sniff reached his oily black claw into a pouch tied around his neck and pulled out a pinch more of their golden dust. "Just be safe, Seas," Sniff said, and he blew the dozy dust into the air, where it floated like crumbly magic onto the corner of Ella and Norman's sleepy eyes once again.
"No chance of them stopping us this time,"
Sniff added before snorting like a pig. Lucy's heart raced. The creakers didn't know she was hiding in the wardrobe, but if they did, they would surely use their magic sleeping dust on her too. Then she had an idea. In fact, the idea was dangling right over her head. Her swimming costume was on the hanger and looped around the top of it were her swimming goggles. She quickly reached up and stretched them over her head, protecting her eyes from any stray crumbs of dozy dust.
"Now let's get her rotten jacket and be taking it back to the world,"
hissed Grunt, creaking towards Ella. The 3 other creakers followed behind him, moving as a shadowy pack in the centre of the room. A dark glob of sliminess creeping up on Ella, who was slumped and slumberous. Who was slumped in a slumberous heap. They stretched out their claws, reaching for the grubby jacket, heading right towards the spot on the floor marked with a C, right where Lucy wanted them. And we'll stop there. Chapter 12. We'll find out what happens tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hope you enjoyed that one. Get to see them. Get all they're horrible, aren't they? Anyway, bye.